To input your offset press preferences, click on the Offset Press button on the toolbar or choose Offset Press from under the PrintQuote Pro menu. The Offset Press Preferences dialog will open with the default press preferences chosen if an offset press is the default press you're using for jobs. Here we don't have a default press. When creating a press, you do not necessarily require one set of preferences for each press. You can have a number of preference settings for a press depending on the type of jobs you wish to run. For example, you could have preferences for a GTO that's doing a run on paper stock, and another set of preferences for a GTO that's running cardstock. You could call one press GTO board and the other press GTO paper. Then you can have subtle differences depending on the type of stocks you're running. If you wish to create a new set of preferences for an offset press, choose Create New Press from under the Press Name drop-down menu at the top of the screen, and this will clear all of the offset press variables. The first set of preferences we will create is for a Heidelberg GTO, a one-colour press running card stock. First of all, we enter the maximum number of colours per run. In this case, for GTO, it'll be 1. When we do that, the Make Ready and Make Ready time appear in the Colours section. PrintQuote Pro can handle up to 6 colour presses. So when we type in the number of maximum colours here, we'll have that number of Make Readies and Make Ready times appear in the Colours section. For this press, we'll be just having 1 Make Ready. Next, we enter the cost of plates. You can have the option here for 2 different types of plates. Some printers may use both metal and polyester, or have two different types of plates that they use on a particular press. Here we're into $25 for metal, $20 for polyester. Next, we enter the press rate per hour, $56. And we can also take into consideration the cost of consumables used when running a print job, cleaning fluid, cleaning cloths, etc. In this case, we'll make it 35 cents per thousand. And we can also enter a minimum charge for the print job. Here we'll enter $28. You can also have the option to have a percentage markup over and above the running cost of the press. In this case, we won't have a markup. Then we enter the impression rate information. As the number of impressions increases, you may run your press faster. The impression details enables you to enter the rates for varying in impressions. For example, up to 5,000 sheets, you may run the press with a lower quantity of 4,000 per hour. Then between 5,000 and 10,000, you may run the press faster with an increased throughput of 5,000 per hour. Then over 10,000 sheets, you may run the press at 6,000 per hour. And also, for each of these different quantities, you can enter the number of overs you want for each. And the minimum quantity for run is automatically calculated from the running cost of the press per hour and the impression rate. And then the minimum cost also is calculated. The Include All Runs in Minimum Quantity checkbox, when selected, includes all runs in the minimum quantity. For example, if your minimum run is 400 sheets, then if there are 2 runs, the minimum run will be 200 for each colour run. If it is not checked, then if there are 2 runs, the minimum quantity will be 800 sheets, 400 for each run. Use the accumulative impression rate for press runs checkbox is not selected, then the rates are calculated based on the total number of sheets in the run. For example, if you're running 12,000 sheets, then the rate would be 12,000 divided by 6,000 by 56, which is $112 for the 12,000 sheets. If the Use the accumulative impression rate costing for press runs checkbox is selected, then the rates are calculated on the number of sheets in each impression rate in the run. For example, if you're running 12,000 sheets, then the rate would be 5,000 divided by 4,000 by 56, which is $70 for the first 5,000 sheets, 5,000 divided by 5,000 by 56, which is $56 for the next 5,000 sheets, and 2,000 divided by 6,000 by 56, which is $18.66 for the remaining 2,000 sheets. And the total cost of the run would be $70 plus 56 plus $18.66, which is $144.66 for the whole 12,000 sheets. The number of options for entering the make ready cost will depend on how many colours you've entered into the maximum colours per run field at the top of the screen. And you enter in here the cost of the make ready and the make ready time. In this case, $25 and 15 minutes. You can set the percentage value for additional make readies for the plate changes during a run as well. This may occur, for example, if you're printing business cards with a number of name changes during the run, and this will mean that one plate will be changed during the run for each name change on the cards. And this plate change may not be as costly or time consuming as setting up the press in the first place, so the make ready for the changes will be a percentage of the original setup make ready. Here we'll use 50%. Here we can enter in the print area of the size of the press's grip and choose whether or not the press grips on the long edge or the short edge. And it is used when calculating the fit for the size of the running stock, that is, the stock put through the press. So here we've got a maximum length of 520, width 360, minimum 200, width 145 and a grip of 10 mils, and it's run on the short edge. Now we can enter the cost and time for ink wash-ups for both black and coloured ink. Here we'll have $7, 10 minutes, and the same for colour. To calculate the cost of ink used in a print run, there's two methods available. One, we can charge ink as a percentage of the cost of the print run, that is the percentage based on an A4 size sheet. If, for example, you enter 0.5%, then 5% of the print running cost will be added for an A4 running size sheet. If you were printing on an A3 running sheet, that would be 0.5 by 2, 4%. Or for A5, 0.5 by 0.5 of the cost in the run, and so on. How much smaller or larger than an A4 sheet is calculated, and that is added to the cost accordingly. The second method, we can charge the ink as so much per 1,000 sheets put through the press with a minimum amount per colour. In this case we'll put 95 cents and $5 for the minimum cost per colour. When entering the setup costs for numbering and perfing, we can include numbers and perforations in the initial setup cost. In the include num perfs in numbering and perfing setup field, we can type in the number or numbers of perforations. When entering the setup cost for numbering and perfing, we can include numbers or perforations in the initial setup cost. In the include numbers perfs in numbering and perforating setup field, we can type in the number of numbers or perforations to be included in the initial numbering and perforating setup. If the press is printing an ink at the same time, it may be necessary to take into consideration whether any numbering or perfing setup is to be included in the press initial make ready. If the include first colour make ready and numbering and perfing setup checkbox is selected, the print colour make ready will be used instead of the numbering and perfing make ready. If you have the press preferences to have a separate setup for numbering and a separate setup for perforating, when you're running either numbering or perforating jobs, then these numbering or perforating setup values will be used. However, if you're running a particular job with both numbering and perforating at the same time, then you can average the numbering and perforating setup for the job. Averaging the setup in this case is the default. If you do not wish to average the numbering and perforating setup costs, then use numbering and perforating simultaneously. Select the Don't Average Setup Cost for Numbering and Perforating checkbox. For numbering, we can enter in the setup cost, setup time, how much per thousand, and how much for each additional number, and the same for perforations. And since we created the press using Create a New Press on the Press Name drop-down menu, we now need to click on Add Press to save the information we've entered and give the press a name. So from now on, whenever we want to change any values here, we'll be clicking on Update Press to save the modifications. To delete a press, we first select it in the drop-down menu, then click on Delete Press, and you'll be asked to confirm the deletion. We also have the facility to duplicate a press. So if for now we were going to do a GTO paper set of preferences, we'd click Duplicate Press, give it a new name, GTO paper, click OK, and then that becomes this set of preferences. Then we can make the changes and then update press. So we may change the rate, 50 per hour, and then we update press. Leave the name the same, click OK. So now, very quickly, we've now got two presses very similar with slightly different preferences.